Today I'm going to show you how to make pickles, a fast pickle, rather than a traditional long-term storage pickle. They're called fast pickles because you can make them quickly, and also I think because they don't last as long as the more traditional pickles, canned pickles, where you have the canning bath and you have to seal the jar, and that's a lot of work and you need specialized equipment for it. This is not, and you don't. Fast pickle you can make with just about any kind of vegetable, actually. I prefer denser root vegetables like carrots and radishes. Cucumbers are nice. I've pickled tomatoes before. You could probably even pickle a potato if you wanted to, although I've never tried that. I might have to give that a shot, but not today. Now I'm going to use this opportunity to show you some basic knife skills, which are important in the kitchen, probably the most important thing in the kitchen. The foundation of everything else is how to use your knife properly. This is a chef's knife. You'll notice some of the features of the chef's knife. It has a slightly curved edge so that you can do your rocking cuts. It is a thick spined knife, so it's not very bendy or flexible, which is fine, but it's very strong. Has a point on the end, but not a pronounced point. It's fine on this side and only pointed on that side. And this is your go-to knife for just about anything you're going to do in the kitchen. This is a Henckels. Henckels is a fairly famous knife company. They make a good quality knife. There are several other companies that make really good knives as well. If you're only going to buy one good knife for the kitchen, if you're only going to buy one good knife, the chef's knife is the knife you should buy. This is the one you use 90% of the time in the kitchen. The only times you would use a different one are if you're filleting a fish or deboning something. You might want a fillet knife or a deboning knife. And occasionally you'll find you want to use a paring knife, like if you're taking the stems out of tomatoes or doing some titchy little small work around a vegetable of some sort. A paring knife is the way to go. Okay, today, just for example purposes, I'm going to be making a pickle out of this radish. Don't want that part. Now, as I've mentioned before in the episode that I don't recommend you watch, I live in China. And in China, it is important to peel pretty much any vegetable that you can peel, because everyone from the farmers to the stall people, the vendors, the vegetable sellers, will spray everything with chemicals and all sorts of stuff. So rather than risking trying to wash it off, you just peel it. If you live in a country where vegetables are safe, you can leave the peel on if you like. For cucumbers and stuff, that's generally the case. This kind of radish, maybe not. The peel actually isn't even very good to eat. Okay, so what we're going to do, actually I'm not even going to chop this up yet. I'll demonstrate the knife skills and show you how to chop up a radish in a moment. What we need to get done first is get our pickling spice ready and get our brine going. You can go on the internet, do a Google search or whatever, and find a bajillion different recipes for pickling spice. I would recommend that you find a few that look interesting and try them. I like to use my mortar and pestle. You don't need a mortar and pestle. You can use almost anything that will chop up a spice grinder, one of those little bzz machines, that's fine. There we go. I just want to get this outer stuff off. This is cardamom, and the part you want is that inside seed. Looks a bit like a peppercorn. That's the tasty bit. Alright, don't want too much of that, or it doesn't taste good. A little bit of yellow mustard seed. And I'm not making very much. This is a very small batch of pickles. so I don't need too much in the way of brine or things in the brine. This is allspice. Don't put too many of those either. They're fairly strong in the flavor department. And some black mustard seed. There we go. Now, the way that we're going to make these pickles is we're going to cook up a brine, which is a mixture of vinegar, white vinegar usually, but vinegar and water, and salt, sugar, spices, herbs. Well, the herbs don't go in the brine. We'll get to that in a minute. And we're going to heat that up to its boiling, and then pour it over our sliced vegetables. And that will cook them partially, par-cook them or blanch them, and it will pickle them, basically. Pickling is where you use an acid like vinegar to prevent bacteria from growing in your food and possibly making you sick. And it also tastes nice. So, black pepper. Excuse my break head movements. I've been told that makes people a bit ill, so I will try to be smoother in my motions. Black pepper. As you can see, I like black pepper. I buy lots of it. There we go. Now I'm just gonna. I'm not grinding it up into a fine powder or anything. I'm just basically trying to crack open the seeds. Here we go. Now you're not going to get as much flavor out of your spices in a fast pickle as you would in a traditional pickle. It's just there's not enough heat involved over a long enough period of time to extract as much of the flavor as you would get in a traditional pickle. But there are some things you can do to get as much as possible out of them. I'll explain those as we go. So I'm just crushing up the black pepper mostly at this point. The mustard seeds do what they do. You're not going to get those cracked open too much. Now, if this seems like a lot of effort, and I get it, that's fine. It is actually a fair bit of work. You can buy pickling spice from most supermarkets, any place that sells that kind of thing. Just pre-blended, pre-mixed pickling spice that you just drop into your brine, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with those either. There. Alright, so we've got that ready to go. Now we're going to mix up our brine. Generally you want a 2-to-1 ratio water to vinegar. So I'm going to put 150 milliliters of vinegar. Again, this is a small batch. You increase your amounts depending on how much stuff you're pickling, but I know that 450 mils is probably enough to cover that one radish that I'm pickling right now. So 150 mils of vinegar, 300 mils of water, 450 total. Pop that into a pot. Start it cooking. And again, I mean, we really only need to bring this up to a boil. But if we want to get the most possible flavor out of our pickling spice, we can cook it a bit longer and extract more flavor out of that. So that just goes in there. And put in our sugar and salt. Now I'm going to use about a teaspoon of salt. There we go, nice even teaspoon. And this you can adjust to taste as you make these more and more often. You'll get more used to them. I'm going to put in a tablespoon of sugar. The sugar helps to cut the acidity, the sourness of the vinegar, sorry. But the acidity is still there, we just don't taste it. The acidity is what prevents the bacteria from growing. So, okay, so we've got our salt, our sugar, give it a little mix here. Salt, sugar, spices, yes. I like to throw in a bay leaf. Now bay leaf doesn't have a very strong flavor of its own, so you won't taste the bay leaf exactly, but what bay leaf does is it brings out the other flavors. It enhances and boosts the other flavors in there. So you will notice if it's not there once you're used to having it in there. I really, really like a bay leaf in the brine. Others don't, that's fine. One of the wonderful things about pickles is that you can do pretty much whatever you want and it's still okay as long as you understand the basics. So, while that is getting up to temperature, we can cut this, and I'm going to... This is really, really fundamental and really, really important, how to use your knife. Now, one of the reasons you want a chef's knife in the kitchen is because you want the wide blade. And the reason for that is because you're going to be rubbing it along your knuckle as you cut. Your dominant hand that's holding the handle of the knife is only responsible for moving the knife back and forth as you cut. The other hand is responsible for moving the knife this way along the thing you're cutting. So, for example, if I'm cutting this way, if I'm cutting slices like this, you'll notice that I'm sliding the knife along my knuckle, and this hand is determining where the knife goes on the vegetable. This hand is only moving it back and forth. So that's how I can control how thick my slices are. One thing to note as well is if your vegetable has a slant, it's lower on this side than it is on this side. You want to cut it this way so your fingers are always above the knife. So you curl your fingers under, your fingers are always above the cutting edge of the knife. So if your knife does skip or slip, you're not going to cut off your fingers, which would be bad. If you hold it like this and your knife slips, you're coming into your fingers and there's a chance you're going to cut yourself. So we want to minimize those chances. Our brine is bubbling away here. I'm going to reduce the temperature, simmer that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to finish slicing this part this way. Now, for pickles, the trick is to get them all about the same width, the same thickness, so that the brine can penetrate the vegetable equally. You don't want, depending on the density of the vegetable, this is a fairly dense radish, you could actually do them a fair bit thinner than this and they would still be okay. But the other one, I think these I'm going to cut differently. I'm going to cut these into batons. So I'm going to do slightly thicker slices this way. Now there are specific types of cut and there are names for those. I don't know the names. I'm not particularly good at that sort of thing. I'm going to cut batons this way so that they're about the same. They're a bit thicker than the other ones, but they're narrower. So hopefully the brine will penetrate as well here. I just want to see actually what the difference is in the result between the two shapes. I usually cut them this way, but then they're a little awkward to eat, to be honest. So these longer ones I think I'm going to cut in half as well. Done. There we go. Oh, one thing I should mention, and I did this before I started, but I didn't do it on camera, is before you use your knife, every time you're about to use your knife, you should always hone your knife, and that means using this thing. Sometimes it's called a sharpening steel, but it doesn't actually sharpen the knife. Sharpening the knife changes the angle of the cutting edge. This just hones the knife, and what that means is it helps smooth out any little nicks or rough spots on your edge so that the knife will cut more effectively. So, I mean, technically not sharpening, but effectively it makes your knife cut better. That's kind of what sharpening is for, right? So, oh yes, I also want to include some of this. A little bit of garlic. I'll show you a little trick with garlic. Well, that one actually came out of the can. I'll put 2 in anyway, so that's fine. And a bit of ginger. I can show you a trick with ginger too. Maybe use that much. Okay. Now with ginger, here's a little trick. Under running water and use a spoon and just rub the outside of the spoon right off there. trying to use a paring knife and trim that off a peeler or something like that. You're also less likely to take the skin off your fingers with a spoon than you are with a peeler. The peeler and I have a complicated relationship. So, there you go, nicely peeled piece of ginger. And the way we deal with garlic, put the knife, nice wide blade, right? Put the knife on there and you just hit it with the heel of your hand. Make sure you're putting the sharp end that way so you're not cutting your hand open, because that would be bad too. And this one's already mostly gone. I want the garlic crushed anyway. So then you can cut down on the root side, and that will give you purchase on the peel, which goes off that way. Root side. And this one's all crushed up, so it's going to come out a bit more complicated. There we go. And you don't want this papery bit. It's not nice. All right, and then I'm just going to crush that, push on it. There we go. That goes in there. Flavor. And that little root piece is not so good. The rest of it's okay. And I'm going to just slice. And that can go in as well. And that's good for flavor. So any of the hard seeds that need more work to get the flavor out of them, they go in the brine, which is ready to go. Herbs, dill, for example, or any other leafy herb, oregano, if you want to put oregano in. I've done that before, made sort of pickled tomatoes with oregano, Italian style thing. I think I'm going to put some basil in there. If you have room in your kitchen, I really recommend planting some basil there and harvesting as you need. Rinse, it's dusty. I'm just going to put them in whole leaf like that and see what happens. Flower. Fresh basil is a wonderful thing, and it's pretty easy to grow, even for people who aren't very good at growing things. Okay, so leafy stuff's in there, hard stuff's in here, ready to go. Oh, we're going to have to add a bit of water to that. It's reduced quite a bit. So, as it boils, the water evaporates off, and you have less liquid in there, but the flavors are stronger. And we don't necessarily want that, so I'm going to add back up to boiling. I left it on too long, got distracted. So I'm going to add a bit more water back up to original amounts. Give or take, that's about where it was. And then I'll bring that back up to a boil and pour it on the veggies. Sorry if my back and forth is getting to you. And it shouldn't take long to get that to a boil. Stir. Now, the kind of salt you use, you shouldn't use sea salt for pickles. Okay, let me rephrase that. Sea salt has iodine in it, natural iodine, and the non-stick table salt, the kind that doesn't clump, also has iodine added to it so that it doesn't clump. That's what the iodine does. Iodine will actually discolor your vegetables in a pickle. If you're pickling with iodized salt, it will change the color of your vegetables sometimes. That's not what you want. I personally don't care what my pickles look like. I only really care what they taste like. But lots of people want pretty pickles, I guess. So if you don't want the taste of the pickle is the same regardless of what kind of salt you use. The pickling works just as well either way. But for example, if you pickle with whole cloves of garlic in there, the garlic will turn blue, which is a bit weird if you're not expecting it. So if you can find an uniodized salt, pickling salt, for example, that would be a good choice to preserve the color of your pickles. If you got like the kind of radish that I'm pickling today, this one not so much, but generally they have a very bright red center, and if you use an iodized salt, that will leach out and become much paler, whereas with a pickling salt it won't. Okay, here we go. Taking our boiling brine, pouring it over the vegetables, just enough. So you want your vegetables floating in there. Oh, I need my stir stir. And then what you're going to do is leave them sit until they get to room temperature, more or less. And then you can pop them in the fridge until you're ready to eat them. Generally, the longer they sit in the brine, the more flavor they'll absorb and the better they'll taste. If I want pickles for tonight, I probably should have made them yesterday, basically. It takes about 24 hours for the flavors to really reach their peak. You can make these in a couple of hours and they're still tasty, but they aren't as good as they're going to be after a couple of hours. Generally, I put my pickles into a jar like this. I got this at IKEA, actually. I got a few of them. It's got a little gasket on there and it seals nicely. They're not expensive, so well worth it if you plan to store pickles and things like that in the fridge from time to time. And that's really all there is to pickles. The kind of spices you use and the kind of vinegar you use. You can use apple vinegar, sweeter vinegars. Just make sure you have enough acidity. Some of the sweeter vinegars aren't going to keep your pickles as long. But you can use whatever vinegar you like, whatever spices you like, whatever herbs and things you like, whatever vegetables you like. It's really, really, really a flexible way to add some variety to your pantry very easily. And I mean, if you've got some vegetables in the fridge and you haven't used them yet and they're starting to look like maybe you should use them soon, this is a good way to deal with them as well. Vegetables that are just a little bit off their peak. Not rotten vegetables, obviously, you can't rescue those, but vegetables that are a bit older, a bit wiltier, like, this carrot, for example, it's a bit soft and bendy. I wouldn't want to eat this in a salad. I probably wouldn't cook it and put it in with like peas and carrots or something like that, but I might be able to pickle this and have it come out okay, right? Chop off the end and peel it, get to the stuff in the middle, and you're good. It's still good, it's just a little bit past its prime. Maybe I should have pickled that one too. Anyway, that's pickles. One of my favorite things to eat and one of my favorite things to make. If you do try pickling some things at home, snap some pics, post them in the comments below. I'd love to see what you made and how it turned out. And I guess that's it for today. So I'll see you next time and have fun cooking.